hey, sell me this pen. How would you approach that situation?
Sit back and ask some open-ended questions. Why do you need the pen? What do you use the pen for? How often do you use it? What are the alternatives to using the pen?
How do you think AI impacts sales?
I think it's wonderful. Technology, when looked at the right light, make humans a lot more efficient.
Buyers are now 60 to 80% of the way sold by the time they reach out to a sales rep. If they're more educated than ever before, what does this mean from a sales standpoint?
It gives you a little bit of an advantage because
my best sales conversations are the deep ones where I ask a lot of questions and don't do a ton of talking. Do you see that being a problem with salespeople and sales teams, that they just want to talk and sell?
Absolutely.
Do you think cold calling is still effective?
I never believed in cold callings. I go talk to business owners and I'll ask, tell me about a cold call you responded to that you're currently doing business with that company. And the answer 100% of the time is, I don't have time to answer the cold calls.
So Howard Fisher, founder of Hantarra. I was just looking at your LinkedIn. I had a question come in from, we have a founder talk club, which I'll invite you to if you're not a part of afterwards. But guests have a certain VIP lounge in there where you guys can mingle as founders. And then everyone else has access to the public chat, the behind the scenes. And I always ask questions. I say, hey, I got this guest coming on. Here's their background, their area of expertise. Give me a question or two that you'd want me to ask the guest.
Oh, that's great.
So I'm going to start with this question because you help companies that are experiencing challenges related to sales. Would be a fair way to kind of sum up what you do. Obviously, a lot to that, but in summary, and the first question I got when I said that in the group was, and this stems from, you've seen The Wolf of Wall Street, right? And at the end of that movie, this is the question that came in, the guy, Jordan Belfort, who is played by Leonardo DiCaprio, he's in the audience and he has a pen in his hand and he goes, sell me this pen. And the question was, what would Howard say if that were to be the scenario that he was in, where someone was saying, hey, sell me this pen? How would you approach that situation?
Yeah. So first of all, Alex, thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. I think a lot of times when that question is asked, the answer usually is to that person to actually go into action and try and sell you that pen in a certain way and try and push it on you because I have a product and you might have a need.
Right.
My philosophy in working with clients is we slow down the speed up. And what I mean by that, in this specific scenario, is I think it's a really great opportunity for the person who's trying to sell the pen to sit back and ask some open-ended questions. Why do you need the pen? What do you use the pen for? How often do you use it? What happens when you don't have the pen? What are the alternatives to using the pen? What have you tried in the past? What has worked? What hasn't worked? And try and really understand the value that a buyer would have for that particular product and service. I think another aspect is that people a lot of times can talk about value or a problem they have, but a lot of salespeople don't actually ask, how important is it that you solve that problem? Because there's a lot of people, Alex, that like to talk about problems that they have, they like to kick the can down the road. They're looking for kind of like free advice and what maybe they can like reformulate into a new idea. But I always say that to really qualify a potential buyer, it's not only to identify that they have a problem and you have a product or solution that can solve it, but do they have the strategic importance and emphasis behind them and energy to want to solve that problem? And if that answer is yes, then that to me qualifies someone as really interested in spending more time with me and my company to understand if we truly are the right fit for them.
I agree. I think that's a good one. I think we either get an answer, maybe it's a surface level answer, and we want to attack on that. Like, you need a pen? Oh, great. Because I'm glad you need it because this is the exact pen you need and this is why it's going to do for you. And it's like, you haven't even figured out why they would want it. What happens if they don't get the pen? How urgent is it for them to actually have the pen or solve the problem? I find that you have to go, my best sales conversations are the deep ones where I ask a lot of questions and do uncovering and don't do a ton of talking. Do you see that being a problem with salespeople and sales teams, that they just want to talk and sell instead of actually just sitting back and being calm and listening and asking questions and getting curious?
Absolutely. And I think that's probably a number one problem that I see when I do work with salespeople in the field is that there's a lot of pressure that sales leadership and management puts about key performance metrics, KPIs, calls, meetings, how many opportunities do you open, all of which are important to build the front funnel to figure out
Sure.
what's going to drop out underneath it in order to make your revenue and your profit number. But at the same time, salespeople will rush the sales process. And once again, my philosophy, slow down to speed up. And so kind of understand where we are. So if we're in an initial meeting and it's kind of a get to know you, I talk to my sales team and my sales leaders and the business owners I work with is like, let's celebrate the mini win and let's just establish what is the mini win out of this conversation. So if I'm meeting you for the first time, unless it's a very commoditized product and I'm going to win on price and you have an immediate need, if it's something more that a professional service or some sort of software product, you have to basically do your due diligence and take your time and listen and ask questions. So the mini win in that first conversation, which is usually 5 or 10 minutes, is to get you to commit to a half-hour discovery conversation where we really can do a deeper dive into not just do you need a pen, but I want to understand, do you understand what that pen actually does? And how does it actually not just benefit one act, but does it help you do multiple things? And if it does, then the value is much higher, because if you don't have that one instrument, you can't do a litany of things, not just one thing. And so we spend a lot of time in our coaching celebrating mini wins, and I also share with my sales teams that I do coach, which is also stop when you get that. So if we're talking and I'm like, Alex, this has been a really good conversation. It sounds like you might have a problem and we might have a solution. Do you have 30 minutes in the next week so that we can actually do a deeper dive? Yes, Howard, I do. Great. Wednesday at 1 o'clock work for you? Works perfect. Great. Stop, close the meeting. You've done your job. Don't try and then turn that into, well, if you have another 30 minutes, we could do this all now, and then I can get you the proposal, and then you can sign tomorrow. Allow the person that you're working with to help you dictate the sense of urgency and how quickly this is going to move. And though I do believe salespeople need to control the sales cycle, you can't force a sale on someone in order to meet kind of your metrics that may be important to you in a one-on-one meeting.
Right.
But in that particular instance, my sole goal is to get you to commit to a discovery meeting. And in the discovery meeting, my sole goal is to really validate your need and my solution and cultural fit. Can we work together as business partners? And if that's yes, yes, and yes, then my only goal after that is like, Alex, would the next appropriate step for me to share with you what the investment looks like and what a proposal? Yes, it is. And then I'm asking questions about, if I were to get you a proposal in the next 2 days, what are your next steps? I want to understand, are you the sole decision maker? Or do you have to bring other people in? How quickly do you think you want to make a decision? All those things then help me kind of not just prioritize my time with you, but also allow me to structure and then manage the information up through my pipeline to my leader about when and if this deal is going to come in.
So I want to ask you more about the meeting, but we're going to kind of systematically break it down with like
Sure.
maybe cold call, meeting, closing, all that stuff here in a second. But I love where you're going with this. It almost seems like because you have the pressure to want to like get a deal, whether you're the owner, founder, or sales rep, you've got leadership, how many deals you have, how many are closing, what's your forecast, what's your revenue. It almost seems like because of that, it sometimes unintentionally forces sales reps to be a little bit more, I got to sell, I got to sell, I got to sell. But what that does is actually hurts their sales game, and then they actually end up selling less. So it's almost like they think they're trying to sell more and be more aggressive, and I need to talk more about the product and service and get right to the close. In reality, because they feel so much pressure sometimes, in reality, that's actually hurting them.
Absolutely. So common thing,
Yeah.
slow down the speed up.
Right.
So in those situations where you feel like you're getting pressed, what happens when the stress level goes up? Most of the times, and there's a lot of studies out there, that the brain doesn't work as efficiently and effectively because it's stressed. And when it's stressed, it's survival mode, right? And because it's survival mode, it's only doing those things that will make me survive more likely than something else, which means in a sales situation, if I'm forcing all this conversation unnecessarily or moving the sale quicker than it needs to be moved, I am going to miss things. If I miss things, to your point, I might get the win, but what if that win ends up being a complete and total nightmare for operations to actually service?
Yeah.
And if that operations team has to step back and spend more time than anticipated because we didn't ask the right questions,
Right.
what does that do to profitability? Well, profitability goes down. So at the end of the day, for a business owner, yes, I want to grow my top line revenue, but I don't want to do it at the sacrifice of my profit.
Mm-hmm.
Because if I'm running $1 million profitable business and I want to grow to $5 million in revenue, and let's just say I want to get to a $2 million in EBITDA, but when I get the growth, I'm at 500,000 because I don't know how to manage the growth. Then we're working really hard for less.
Right.
And so when I meet business owners,
which is how you burn out, right? Yeah.
Well, not only burn out, but then you're hiring and firing.
Yeah.
You're doing, pulling back on things. Maybe your service isn't where you need it to be. You're not innovating new products and services. The challenge, I think, with most business owners when I meet them is like, well, I'm a 5 million or a 10 million. I want to be double. And I say, that's great. I go, let's talk about the stuff no one either really, really understands or really wants to talk about. Let's talk about the P&L. Let's talk about what does that mean to your profit line. And if you were to grow, Alex, today from a $10 million business to a $20 million, what would your organization look like? How many people would you have to have? If you're manufacturing, can you deliver $20 million under this brick and mortar, or do you have to buy new property? And who would fill all these roles? So there's these downstream impacts to growth that if business owners aren't anticipating and planning for, sometimes they get caught in this trap, which is hiring a bunch of salespeople, going out and closing deals, but then not being able to service them, and they're not able to achieve their objectives, which is at the end of the day, we want to grow a profitable business because the more profitable it is, if you ever want to hand it off to your family or you want some sort of investment or strategic, they're going to be looking at that profitability to determine, what is that factor that they're going to purchase that business for. It's the multiplier.
Where are companies struggling the most with sales? As you look at your, portfolio of clients, you talk to prospects, where's the one or two areas that you feel like almost every company struggles when it comes to sales?
I think there is a complete misunderstanding of what sales actually is and what it involves in the business community.
Even at the leadership level?
Yes. I think for most small and mid-sized businesses. And I kind of go back to, you had movie reference to start. So Moneyball, right?
Yeah.
And where there's that comments, like, I think there's a fundamental understanding of where like runs come from.
Yeah.
It's not about, it's about getting on base. It's not about necessarily your batting average, right? It's these other things. It's the metrics behind it. So when I talk to, most business owners, and I work with family-driven or founder-led businesses, and they'll come to me with the premise, sales are not going in the right direction. So they're disappointed, or they're exhausted. They're wearing lots of hats. They think they're doing everything, or discouraged because the exit I'm going to get is moving further away. Mm-hmm. And when we start to talk about sales, I really try and pull back a little bit and so tell me a little bit about, how do you plan to go to market to sell your products and services? What does that look like throughout the year? Who's doing what? And what has worked and what are some areas of growth? And usually I'll get a very siloed answer. I will get I hired these salespeople and I have no idea what they're doing, but I know that they're not growing sales and they're a lot of energy. Okay, so it's my salespeople that's the problem. Okay, tell me a little bit about how you are managing and what technologies do you use in order to drive your sales team. What client relationship management tool are you using? Is it homegrown? Are you using something for your industry? Are you using some of the what would be commonly known, a Pipedrive, a Clarity, a HubSpot, a Salesforce, any of those. And a lot of times you'll hear, well, we haven't really invested in that, or we don't use that, or we bought onto one, but no one ever used it. Yeah. And then I'll ask a question around, well, share me a little bit about what your go-to-market strategy is. How do you actually market to your buyers who you are, what you do, what your value prop is, your special sauce, vision, mission, purpose, your core values, all the things that people really want to know before they sign on. And a lot of times they'll either not have a clear vision of what they do, or they'll share like, well, we do some posts on LinkedIn and I've got a website, and I think the sales team sends out cold emails. Mm-hmm. And so what I mean is that the business owners look at sales in segments. And I believe that truly organizations that want to grow. And historically, clients that I've worked with, whether they've been in my business or when I was in corporate, where we've really grown, is where you think about your growth of your organization as the business development ecosystem. And what do I mean by that? That's the intersection of sales, marketing, and technology combined with how operations then supports all the inputs to the organization. And I think it's a highly collaborative approach.
Yeah.
Marketing exists in order to ignite the sales plan. The sales plan exists to fuel the business plan. I think that's the other component when you asked about like what business owners do that understand or do not know. You'd be amazed at how many times I'll speak to a business owner and I'll say, great, more than happy to kind of figure out how I might be able to help you. Share with me your 1, 3, 5, 7, 10-year business plan. And you'll get blank stares. Mm-hmm. You'll get, what are you talking about? We're not going to hit my number this year. So you really need to kind of understand what is the vision for their organization. If they don't have a fully baked business plan, at least try and get the business owner to articulate, this is where I want to be in 3 or 5 years. I want to be 30 million. Okay. And then you start peeling back the onion and asking some questions. But for me, it's the business development ecosystem. And if you can understand how those three components, marketing, sales, and technology work, you can really build a robust sales operating system that an organization, long after working with me, can have confidence can grow year over year. And I think that's the key that some business owners miss, is that really you're looking for the business development operating system to be a part of your organization. It's not necessarily about going out and finding the right salesperson or investing a boatload of money in LinkedIn ads or buying the most expensive CRM. It's a little bit of everything. Mm-hmm. And you really need to find the right kind of chef to partner with, to pick the right pieces based on industry and direction and where you are today and where you want to go, to kind of bake that entire business development operating system and then allow it to, grow over time with the company and the culture.
Why do you think the misalignment exists in the first place?
Yeah, people aren't slowing down the speed up. Right? Business owners.
I didn't want to answer that, but I was like, the same thing we just talked about, right?
That could be my answer to
that's
a
what
lot
it
of
is
things,
in my mind.
Right?
Yeah.
Business owners are moving so quickly at the founder level and family-run businesses that they want to get to the end point, and the end point's really important. But going back to your earlier point about like when salespeople rush just to get the deal done and all that stuff that's missed, I believe if you do slow down the speed up, what you'll see is your velocity in order to close the right deals at the right time will actually improve over time than simply going after the incremental wins.
It takes discipline to slow down, to speed up. Mm-hmm. It really does. And I've been talking about that in marketing recently. Just people are like, getting a post out. It's like, it's not doing anything. You're posting more content and you're getting less results than you ever have before because it's just checking a box. It's just, we're in a rush to get something out, post something on LinkedIn, post something on Instagram, do a podcast, and there's no intention, there's no thought behind it, there's no strategy behind it, there's no interconnectivity behind it, as you mentioned, with sales, marketing, and the operating system. And I think it's an art, it's a skill to slow down, because you almost feel like you're missing out on something when you slow down. You feel like if I press the brakes a little bit, we might miss a sale. We might miss this. We might lose out on an opportunity here, And it's hard to have that mindset.
So I think it's diligence. I think it's patience. I also believe it's having a business culture of holding people, watch out, accountable and responsible for the roles and responsibilities and the activities and the metrics. And that's another piece of this that is lacking in a lot of organizations. It's really done more subjectively. And at the end of the day, for a business, you have to figure out what matters and you have to measure it, and it has to be objectively. Yep. So I think that plays a little bit into it. I think another part is, unfortunately, I think where we are as a society from the standpoint of always looking to your left and your right and feeling like you've got to be better by some sort of measure to the person or the company on your right or left. And I think each company has its own, like we all have our own journeys. They go at own different paces. And it's okay to slow down, because slowing down will allow you to speed up. And the last part on diligence that I'll share is that I don't think enough companies are truly living their vision, mission, purpose. I think they put it out there and their core values because they think every company needs to have it, and they read it somewhere. Well, you have to have it on your website. But I think the companies that truly live vision, mission, and purpose and their core values will hire to those.
Yeah.
You'll bring people into your business, and then it's all about serving the business and your clients based upon that vision, mission, purpose. And yes, it's important that everyone get paid reasonably and fairly for what they do. But the mind shift is I'm no longer coming to work to get my paycheck or my bonus. I'm coming to work in order to further the vision, mission, and purpose, because we all have these chosen values and believe that our product and service can better our clients in the long run.
Do you feel like in your business you sometimes get caught up even in wanting to go too fast, or are you pretty good about slowing down?
That's a great question. I think I am intentionally comfortable with slowing down. I will say that it's not as easy to slow down when you get the great opportunity to talk to these business owners. And the reason why I left corporate was to give back to the small and mid-sized business owners. And so I lead with, I want to help.
Yeah.
So sometimes my eagerness to help will not allow me to slow down. I'm actually speeding up. However, I think with transparency in all the relationships, especially in the services that I provide, if you are transparent, you can share with the client, hey, look, we have a great opportunity in order to fulfill your vision, and here's what we're going to do. Just know in the first 60, 90 days, I'm working with another client and we're kind of wrapping things up. So we're going to start a little slow here, but then we're going to, put gas on the fire. And so I think if you're transparent, people understand. It's when I think people take on too much work and make everyone feel like, which you should, they're a high priority. But if you mislead people, then you get yourself in a bind, because now you really are having to speed up, and you're probably going to do what? Start missing things. You're not going to deliver to the level that you want. And eventually what will happen is it'll slow down your growth down the road.
Even though I think of sales training, coaching, generating revenue, a lot of what you do seems to be very culture, team, leadership focused as well as you get into a company, because you start to realize it's not just about teaching some salesperson how to open up a call better. It's the fact that leadership isn't involved, or they don't have the vision or mission, or there's no accountability. Would that be accurate to say?
Yeah, I think, when I look at kind of the marketplace of, I guess what we're terming today, fractional support, and kind of the growth engine areas, so technology, operations, sales, and marketing, I feel like my experiences working with small and mid-sized and enterprise companies over 25 years. I started my career as an attorney, a litigator, so I've had a interesting journey, and it gives me maybe just a little bit different perspective. I think that what my clients would share is that, yes, I've been retained to solve a sales problem, but the value I drive is way beyond that, in that there's a lot more business coaching and ability to dig into my network when I see problems. So for example, had one client had extreme growth in 18 months, basically doubled their revenue. And, the operations leader was trying to catch up on everything that was going on to service a double in demand, and probably getting a little behind the eight ball in financials and the strategy of the money, right? It's different when money's at a certain level and you're just kind of moving it, but then it's coming in at different paces. There's the strategy of how you use it and what you invest in and what levers. So just being able to be involved in those conversations, that I could introduce that company to some fractional leaders in the financial space. Happens all the time when I go into companies in marketing and technology. And the other part of it is, I think, to get to your point, is like a lot of times clients won't know exactly where their issue is. And that's when I dovetail back into the business development ecosystem. And with me and my organization, we'll come in and look at those three pillars: sales, marketing, and technology. And especially with the influx of artificial intelligence and not really everyone understanding how we actually use that to better sales, or better the organization, And it gives me a foundation for a holistic approach. So where my mind is, and I think where this industry is probably going, is that coming out of COVID, everyone went fractional. So every single business unit now has a potential fractional leader. And I think on the front end of it, I think you're going to start to see consolidation where people are going to say, you know what, why do I have to go out, get a sales, a marketing, and a technologist? Isn't there one company or one organization that kind of bring that all in and then kind of understand how all these things work and then put a plan together that might be, we're doing a little bit of marketing, a little bit of sales and technology at the same time, rather than, well, let's do marketing first, and then we'll do the sales, and then we'll bring the technology.
Yeah,
because that really slows you down, because now you're moving in year increments, where I think the other way that I see it, more companies being willing to go down, trunks that down in 2 months.
I definitely see that. You mentioned go-to-market strategy. Mm-hmm. There's probably some founders, CEOs listening right now saying, I don't know if we have a go-to-market strategy. How would you know if you have one? What is one at a high level?
So go-to-market strategy is critical for a business. It's critical because it defines a few things. First of all, it's who is your ideal client profile? What does that traditional buyer look like? And what I try and work with my clients on when I'm starting to onboard them and have conversation is it's not the complete universe of ideal client profiles. Yeah. I want to know, of those ideal client profiles, who's more probable to buy our products or service. Anything is possible. I want to work in probabilities, because if the probability is high, then I can leverage volume and I can leverage focus in order to convert those more into win. If you tell me I got to go this far and everyone's possible, well, the possibilities might be endless, but your ability to convert isn't. Mm. The other part is buyer persona, which is really just the title. Like, who's the buyer, the normal buyer? Who are the influences? Do you know who they are? And I was just having this conversation with a logistics company that I just started working with, and we were talking about the go-to-market strategy, which they have pretty well defined. But when we were bringing on the new salespeople, it was like a lot of people will focus on, here's my ICP, ideal client profile, my buyer persona, BP. Okay, and now I'm just going to go sell. And I'm like, no, we have to dig deeper. And the question is that for that particular influencer or buyer, what is the actual day-to-day business problem that they are facing that has to be solved with an external resource, product, service? And more importantly, what happens if that is not solved? Like, what's the impact?
Right.
And Alex, when you start to dig deeper and deeper, what we came out with is like, there's probably something about that failure in product or service that will eventually make me feel uncomfortable in a meeting with my boss, because I'm not hitting my key performance metrics, whatever those might be for that product or service. So really get to the heart of the matter, is the impact on the actual performance of your decision maker, and really understanding how strategic is this problem. Because if it's critical, because if whatever the buyer's own is like, if I don't have the right product and services and it's not driving up profitability, but it's driving profitably down, and I'm responsible for that because I'm a CFO, or in this case, director of logistics, things along those lines. Those are all things that will keep someone up at night, and that's the reason why you're talking to me, because you want to solve that critical problem.
Mm-hmm. It does have to be a critical problem in most cases too. Otherwise, there's just too many other things to do. If it's not a critical thing that's, we need to solve this pretty urgently, it probably just won't get done.
Or it'll get done on your own timeline, which, if I don't ask the questions, doesn't allow me as a salesperson to manage my day.
Yeah.
If my sales cycles are 45 days and it's not a critical problem for you, and like, Howard, I really do want to solve this problem. Great. On the list of problems you have, where does it rank? Well, it's 10th. Okay. Does that mean that you're not going to get to it for how long? Probably not another year. Perfect. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to touch base in about 6 months to see if that escalates a little bit. And until then, we're gonna, if you don't mind, continue to share with you, best practices and kind of educate you a little bit more on our project. But when it becomes a significant problem, we can re-engage. It allows me to manage my day.
Yeah.
Also allows me to be more credible with my boss in managing my pipeline. Because now that opportunity in my pipeline, I can put, this is a 2026 close, and this is when I'm going to start to re-engage. However, I talked to these other 5 buyers, and by the way, it is problem number 1 and 2. Given our 45-day window, I have high confidence if worked properly, these 5 will close in 45 days. Here's the revenue. Ops can take that and put that into their model along with finance and figure out how that's going to drive the P&L for the year.
That sounds like an actual real pipeline that you have there, Howard, yeah. Versus some of them are skeletons, Right. I think it's where content can play a role too, right? Having good content hit their feed or get in front of them, whether it's email or social media, LinkedIn, podcasting, having good content that continually nurtures them, but sometimes speeds up that process to where, you check back in 6 months, but maybe they've seen content from you the past 3 months. It's getting them to say, man, this kind of is more of a critical problem than we thought.
Correct.
And maybe you're showing them some client success stories or say, hey, this is what happens if you don't solve the problem. And so I think there's opportunity there. Speaking of content, how have you seen sales change over the last 10, 20 years?
Well, I think the most obvious one, Alex, is buyers are now educated. And instead of salespeople engaging with buyers, the old knocking on doors or cold calling, and kind of like generating that energy there, most buyers today will put a hand up to that because they can control how they're accessing the information. And they will go educate themselves and they will raise their hand and, what a lot of marketers call some sort of call to action. I'm going to get on the website and say, call me. I'm going to put a phone call in. I'm going to respond to an email. There's some sort of call to action. So I think that's the one significant change.
On that really quickly, they say that buyers are 60 to 80% of the way through the buying cycle by time they reach out to sales. Do you think that's true?
Yes. I don't have any hard statistics on it across all my clients, but that sounds right because what you'll always hear from a salesperson is if someone raises their hand and gets in the funnel, that deal will traditionally close quicker than me putting someone in the funnel because I met you at a business,
right?
A business dinner or something. Like I'd be interested in learning more. It sits in the funnel, and then you have the 3 to 4 months of education to kind of pull them along. I also think, I've heard things out there that whatever that we talked a little bit about, a go-to-market strategy, which is I try and analogize it to when we were kids. So I always say when you were a kid, or if you're a parent and you have kids, or you're a grandparent now and you look at your grandkids, or somehow went to a playground, I think what you would see if you went every day and that kids that came every day, the kids traditionally will play in the same part of the sandbox with the same toys and the same kids.
Yeah.
And if I'm a business, the sand lot is really, really big. I want to know what part of that sandbox can I dominate, and I'm not going to move from that area until either I have to because I'm so dominant I can now move elsewhere, or unfortunately I get kicked out for some reason, right? So I always talk about what part of the sandbox do we want to play in? This goes back to ICP. Who traditionally are we playing with? What do they look like? What are their demographics? What are their psychographics? How I like to be communicated to? How do they actually buy? And then what products or services do we have in order to solve whatever problem it is? And I think that's a useful way to get business owners to really focus in. And they're like, well, what about these white whales? And I say, white whales, every now and then, these really big catches are really good and can really bolster an organization. But what I find for most companies, if they're segmented in 2 or 3 clients, if one of those whales leaves, then they're in a really crunch. The other part of it is I've seen a lot of companies go and win one of those deals, but then they can't service it operationally. It goes against their go-to-market strategy.
Yeah.
We only play with companies that are 200 employees or less and middle market. Oh, but this enterprise company really wants us.
Tempting. Yeah.
Tempting, right? So then we stop what we're doing, we go chase the big thing, and then it doesn't work out the way we wanted to, or we're not successful winning it, and we've kind of ignored kind of all the folks we were playing with in the sandbox. So I think all of that's important. The other part of it is content. I think content is really, really important. But the content, I think those businesses that are understanding this interchange of marketing and technology and getting in front of your buyers are starting to rethink it. And I think the way they should rethink it is, once again, what we talked about earlier, what is the problem that is most keeping you up at night that you need to solve to be successful in your role. And if I'm getting a cold email or educational email, I'm going to be talking in the headline about that problem.
Mm-hmm.
Are you having this type of problem? If so, here are how a company's solving it. If you want to learn more or have a conversation, call me. As opposed to the way I see a lot of it is, if you're in this business, this is Howard's company, and Howard's company, it's all about me.
Not going to work, yeah.
Right? I've got to speak to the pain that you're feeling that you need to solve urgently. And if it's a match there, you're going to immediately raise your hand, and we're going to be engaged in substantive conversations about whether it's a fit to move forward.
So if buyers are now 60 to 80% of the way sold by the time they reach out to a sales rep, if they're more educated than ever before, what does this mean from a sales standpoint? What do we do with that information?
Well, I think from a sales standpoint, it gives you a little bit of an advantage because traditionally those people who are educating themselves have a really good understanding of what the problem is and what the impact of the business. So when you ask questions about, well, if this problem isn't solved, what does it mean to the business? And you actually have the patience and directness to ask the right questions about, well, tell me more. What is the actual revenue impact, or what is the profitability impact? They'll have the answers to that because they've done their research and their homework. A lot of times, prior in the sales, kind of my journey and talking to folks who are out there today, you'll ask that question like, well, I don't know. I have no idea. My boss just told me we need new accounting software. Right? So they're
not as far along down the journey, right?
They're not far along down the journey. And because of that, they don't have the right answers. And now you're selling. You might be doing a selling mismatch. Yes, I've got accounting software, but maybe their problem isn't what our problem solves.
Yeah.
So, or maybe it doesn't integrate in an open environment with other software tools.
Yeah.
So that's the whole other thing is like, have they done their internal research in order to figure out what this all means by solving that problem? And I think salespeople should be in a more advantageous position because when they ask questions, they're going to get more readily answers. And if they're not, in their mind, they should say, well, maybe with this is someone who goes more in the nurturing or education lane, whether it's electronically or in person, or you know what, they have all the right answers. We can now speed up because we've slowed down and move them very quickly through the sales process because they have the answers to our questions. There's a meeting in the minds, and it's like, okay, we're 60, 80% down the road anyway.
Yeah.
So how do we close this loop? Because I want to what? Solve this problem and get on to number 2, whatever that might be.
So I was in sales for 10 years, corporate for 6 years, a large staffing company called Aerotech. And it was very hunter mentality, right? Like typical sales, you had to cold call. I didn't get any leads. You had to go cold call, knock on doors, drop off donuts, all that stuff, right? Networking events. And so I was very used to that type of mentality. Like you had to go out and kill the thing that, hunt the thing, kill the thing, bring it back home for dinner, right? And those conversations, like what you're talking about here, felt very different because most people weren't through the buyer journey yet. They weren't as educated. They maybe didn't even know they needed to make a change or what that change could have made an impact to their business unit or whatever it was. So I found myself on these meetings trying to like introduce myself, build rapport, dig into the pain, figure if there even was a problem. Is it a critical problem? How have they gone about, other solutions to this? What's their current solution? What would need to happen to make a change? And then when I started doing LinkedIn content and podcasting and things like this, it was like people came to you and I saw it. I was like, they're 80%, 90% of the way sold. And they jump on a call and say, yeah, I've seen your videos for the last, 4 or 5 months. I've seen your website. I've seen all your email. It's like, we want to do this. I had a couple questions about our industry specific. Have you worked with someone like this before? But the conversation was just like completely different. Now, on the flip side, I want a little control because I can put out all the content I want. That doesn't guarantee I'm going to get the exact amount of leads I need. So I want to do some outreach and some proactive stuff there too. But man, was it refreshing. And it was a different conversation when people are educated and I always say, if they're 60 to 80% of the way sold by the time they talk to sales, don't you want to be part of that 60 to 80%? I think the answer is yes, right? So other than being more educated, is there anything else that you're seeing that's different than maybe it was pre-COVID? Social selling, I think about LinkedIn. Is there anything different from a sales side of things that you think has changed that was not really the case as much 10 years ago?
Well, I think the emphasis of building relationships in person has very much decreased. I think if there's only one good thing that came out of COVID is people are more comfortable building relationships and solving problems via video, whether that's Zoom or Google Meet or Teams, whatever it might be. But at the end of the day, where you see success in salespeople is no different when it was in person or video or phone or email. It's, do you have the maturity and to understand how to build a relationship?
Do you think there's an advantage, though, of being in person versus video?
There can be. I think I'll give you my best lawyer answer. It depends. Depends on the industry. Depends on the geographical location. I know coming out of COVID, when I was in corporate, there was a big push to get back out there, right? And then you like, I'm going to Portland, so I'm trying to get 5 or 10 meetings to make the trip, valuable.
Yeah.
And then you're setting up calls, and now everyone's working hybrid and remote. And like, well, I can meet you a coffee down the street, but I work at home on Tuesdays and Thursdays. So it wasn't like getting to the corporate address, nor do I think people believe that you necessarily need to do that to win the day. Mm-hmm. Now, with that said, there are very much advantages to meeting in person and doing things to get to know people a little deeper that might be outside of a meeting setting. Yeah. Hey, let's go grab lunch. You want to go to happy hour, dinner, golf, event. Yep. That all is all in play. But I think it's now just one piece of the puzzle, where in the past businesses would line up their year and go, well, you have $50,000 in your entertainment budget. Yeah. And now businesses, or I think those businesses that are financially prudent, are saying, you know what? Why don't you come to us as the salesperson and saying what your relationship strategy is for your territory. Yeah. What do you need in travel? What do you need in entertainment? And let us approve that rather than just giving you a blanket budget. Because like most governmental agencies or anyone who's got a budget, you kind of mentality, use it or lose it. There. Well, I want to use it in a way that's going to drive the objectives, which is build relationship, confirm need to solution, and figure out the most efficient way to move forward possible.
Do you think cold calling is still effective?
All right. I have never believed in cold callings.
Wow.
Never.
I'm surprised
never
to hear that.
believe in cold calling.
So what's your version of that then?
So, well, let me just go back to one part of that. So there is a version of that, and I'll get to that. Okay. But when I go talk to business owners and they'll say, well, my team's not cold calling enough, I will slow down to that kind of premise, and I'll ask one question. In the last year, tell me about a cold call you responded to that you're currently doing business with that company. And the answer 100% of the time is, Howard, I don't have time to answer the cold calls. Why would I do that? Well, if it's not something appropriate for you as a business owner, why would you expect great success from your sales team going out and flooding the market with phone calls and cold emails?
Do you think that's changed the last 5 years, or would you have said the same thing 10, 15, 20 years ago?
I've never believed in cold calling.
Really? Because I did a lot of cold calling.
Yeah. I did too in my career. Never believed in it because I always, not that you couldn't be successful. But the time, energy, and resources to cold call against the return of investment never mapped out.
So what would you do instead?
So I think it's, once again, I think it's this business development ecosystem, and it is a combination of your go-to-market strategy, your marketing initiatives, how your sales team is interacting, and how you're using technology. So in a best case scenario, a business has a very defined ideal client profile, business persona. You know what the problems are. You have created kind of that messaging for that particular audience. You have then decided, where do these decision makers actually play? In other words, are they at events? Are they on podcasts? Are they in LinkedIn kind of groups? Do they react to Google ads or some sort of paid advertising? So you have to know all that. And then I think you have to allow technology to help your sales team be more effective and efficient. So I want my sales team interacting a majority of their time with that 60 to 80% that are educated. And, and there's other statistics out there that say if the entire universe of the people that most likely will buy your product, only 2% are ready to buy. So how often can I get in front of those 2% while we're using other means to stay in front of these other people? So that's where I think, the right messaging that is personalized, but that can be automated, which a lot of the marketing automation tools allow you to do. So you can identify someone like, yeah, Alex, like he's eventually going to buy, but he's education. So he has to go into the education or nurturing campaigns. And so, at the appropriate and professional way, the emails are going to be like little overview of the problem. Here's a case study. Here's a link to a podcast that we just did. Here's an invitation to an event. So you're going to continually, as you said before, what if they're getting educational emails and all of a sudden that 6 months moves to 3 months? Always an opportunity. Mm-hmm. But the salespeople, in my mind, the best way in which to use their time is to figure out how to get them more involved in the 60 and 80%. Simultaneous to that, I'm a big believer that at the end of the day, we're all people and people like to work with people they like. And if you like someone, you're more likely to refer them to someone else. And you as a business owner, me as a business, we play with other like business owners because we're learning best practices. So I want to get into those networks. So I'm a big believer in networking. I'm a big believer of going to events.
What do you say to some people that say networking events are a waste of time? I've tried it, it didn't work.
I would slow down the speed up. What did you do?
What did you give to the event? What did you want to take?
Right? Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Like, do you have an abundance mindset? Are you a giver or are you a taker?
Are there some networking groups that you think are just a waste of time? Like if I'm going to the Chamber of Commerce, is that a waste of time? I know you're part of a really good one, TAC, here in St. Charles. Mm-hmm. Is that different than some of the other ones? Do you find value from that one versus other ones that you've done? Like, how do you evaluate that opportunity?
Yeah, I'm going to, I'm part of a number of networking groups. I think it goes back to my learning. It depends on who you are and where you are. Like we said, like a Chamber of Commerce. Traditionally, those are businesses that are going to be B2C.
Right.
They're restaurants or stuff like that. So if I play in that, if I'm selling like restaurant software, well, yeah, I want to be heavily involved in Chamber of Commerces because there's all new restaurants popping up, right?
Yeah.
And some other things. But if I'm a, B2B company that is selling a certain software to to a certain type of industry, well, they might not be playing in that network. I think the first thing that you want to do in any kind of business network is you want to do your due diligence. Who are the people there? How are they interacting? Are they simply trying to get into your network and introductions, or are they trying to get to know you, trust you, validate you, and over the course of time provide you introductions? Those are usually the best. I also feel like the best are those that are a mix of in-person and virtual. I think you get to really know people. But at the end of the day, I think it goes back to abundance mindset. And there's a number of groups out there. And I always say, hey, it's a little bit of trial and error. All these groups allow you to kind of get a feel for them. So you can do a lot of quote unquote free networking before you might have to invest in one. Mm-hmm. But I like getting back to your question, like what trade shows, I would ask, well, what'd you do? How did you interact? What did you do ahead of time to let people know you were going there? Did you identify a subset of your customers or prospects and invite them to coffee or a lunch, or did you host a dinner? A lot of times the response I'll get asked, we bought a booth, a tabletop, and we stood there and no one came.
It's not a strategy.
It's not a strategy.
It's hoping something comes your way and magically lands on your doorstep.
Exactly. It's not a strategy. The strategy is, I know at this group, these are these types of decision makers, ICPs and buyer personas that I want to work with, or I think I want to work with. Where are they most likely going to engage? Usually, get yourself... if you're going to do a sponsorship, maybe you sponsor something that you get a logo at the happy hour, someplace where people can convene. The other part of it is making sure you use tools like LinkedIn, right? How hard is it to put a post up there and say, hey, I'm going to the Howard Fisher show, we'll be, if I'm in the booth A, or, look from, here's my schedule. There's so many different ways in which to publicize it over LinkedIn. Once again, it goes back to the total strategy. Every time you go to an event, you should have an event strategy. I'll give you one example. I work with a managed service provider and working with the sales team member. And it's been an iterative process. We hired a salesperson. We built a sales infrastructure. We hired a new marketing team. And so we're kind of moving into year 2. And I said, okay, this is the time. And they're also investing in what I call a lot of like trade associations where they can get visibility with decision makers. All great stuff. But working with the salesperson, I said, hey, let's put together a complete full 12-month calendar, which will emphasize where we want to play and how we want to play, what events we're going to, and couple that with the marketing. and making sure that not only are we using the promotion that the event allows us to use, but also our networks.
Yep.
And then the most important thing, then we measure it. How many meetings did we have? How many opportunities developed out of that? How many wins did we get? So that next year when we're doing our budgeting and you say, oh, the Howard Fisher event came calling again, you're like, well, really wasn't the right fit for us. We're going to pass so we can invest in something else. Or you know what? It was dynamite. We're gonna go do it.
I find a lot of companies from a marketing standpoint, because the world we play in is content marketing, a lot of them just don't even measure where their leads come from. They have no clue. It's like, how do you track it? How do you know what's working, what's not working? How do you know whether to invest more in LinkedIn ads or a podcast or this versus the YouTube channel or versus the network event or whatever it is? And I think that's kind of step one is taking a step back and saying, well, let's just assess. Where do we get our customers from? Where are they likely to come into us and meet us? And where are they at in that journey? And that's just a little bit broken in most companies.
Very much so. We talked about earlier about you got to measure what matters.
Yeah.
I'll give you an example. I was working with another client and sort of came into it, had an existing marketing relationship, have all these initiatives, get the monthly reports, web report, and all this stuff, lead report. And someone was providing like a quarterly update. And the website traffic was increasing. It was probably 6 months over time. And time on the website was improving. And that was like the end of it. It was like, oh, yeah, we're going to move on. And like, that's what we're going to try and do in the future. And I said, wait, I said, so what? Like, what's the so what out of it? And we had a good conversation. I said, in my mind, all this activity we have to do has to do one thing. We got to get that 60 to 80% to be educated to raise their hand and say, I'd like to interact with this company. And if you're telling me that, yes, we're increasing all those web time and effort, maybe how do we know how are we not putting a line in the sand that all this activity should deliver this many call to actions? I go, we might be wrong and you might be shy in the number I suggest, but let's just put a line in the sand, and then over the course of time we will be able to make those corrections.
Yeah.
And I think most people in roles like that, and even the business owners, are afraid to put something in the sand because what if they're wrong? They feel like if they don't hit that metric, I'm going to get fired or something bad's going to happen. And what I don't see a lot of businesses doing, Alex, that they should do, everything is about course correction. So if you have a strategy for 90 days and you say in 90 days I need 10 leads, I need 5 to convert to proposals, and I need 1 win, and in 90 days it doesn't happen, if you're not having that moment where you're looking back in that 90-day sprint, you can go through the entire year and have nothing. Where if you look at that and you start looking at the data and say, oh, you know what? This messaging is getting us to the wrong ICP. We need to tweak or course correct. You can course correct to still make your numbers in the year, but you have to do it in a kind of a systematic and diligent way. And most business owners, once again, are moving so quickly. They're like, oh, that's a really good idea. Go do it. And a year later, there's aren't the results. What were we trying to achieve? Oh, website traffic. No. Website traffic is an indicator potentially. Right. But at the end of the day, all marketing has to do, the sole reason to be, is to get qualified leads over to the sales to then run with.
Yeah. Yeah, oftentimes when we come into companies, it's like, well, we're 5 posts a week or 3 posts a week, or we do a blog once a week, but why for? What is the purpose behind it? And if you're just measuring post, I mean, nowadays we can have AI do a post, we can have somebody else write it in the field. Like we can just get post out, just like I can make a bunch of calls. But what are we trying to get from that activity? That's the bigger picture.
And I think you're hitting on something that's a common theme. That for me, sales and marketing is really a math game. What do I mean by that? So if as a business owner, you understand, for example, what my win rate is. So if I'm a 50% win rate and I know what my average deal is and how long it takes, if I understand that,
99% of people don't know those numbers, but yeah.
But even if you can even suspect what you think they should be or want them to be as a starting point, you can work your way back. So if I need X amount of revenue and I know that 50% is my win rate, well, I need 2 times that in proposals.
Yeah.
And if I know that it takes me 3 times my proposal moments in meetings, so that's the meaningful activity. What I don't like to see is in management meetings or sales meetings I'll go into, and someone will be like, how many phone calls do you make this week? How many emails did you send?
Right.
I personally share, I think that is a coaching issue. For example, if I've got 2 reps and one's making 100 calls a week to get 5 meetings and another's making 10 to make 5 meetings, as a coach, I got to figure out what this person is doing with that volume because they're missing something in their messaging, right? That's a coaching issue. For me, where it starts is how many discovery meetings are we having that really validate need to want and solution? And then how many of those are we converting the proposals at what level to get to your number in the background?
Mm-hmm.
Now, do you want to look at activity over a course of time?
Sure.
Absolutely. It's an indicator.
Mm-hmm.
It's not something that should be a check off where someone says, oh, you're doing your job, Alex. You made 100 calls.
Right.
No, it's the conversion of the calls and the emails to a get to know you moment, to a discovery meeting, to a proposal, if that's appropriate, to a win. Those are the important mile markers. Like measure what matters and, kind of hover over those other indicators. Those other indicators are really, once again, coaching, but it also could be like, as I'm sure you see with a lot of companies you work in, and your team is, it's right fit, right person, right seat. That's another big issue. And that's where I think a lot of business leaders miss, is they got the wrong person in the wrong seat. Mm-hmm. And, it's my nephew, it's my niece, it's my buddy's down the street son, or it's my buddy.
Or it's just a good person that they don't want to let go or discipline or hold accountable because they're nice.
Right.
And it's hard to do that to nice people.
And sometimes I share with them then, hey, you know what? What do they like to do and do well? What do they don't like to do and don't do well? And is there a role that better fits that? And they will be more productive in a role than having them in a role. And I think that's one other thing I'll share is I think and I realize small to mid-sized businesses are trying to do more with less, but I find a lot of people wearing a lot of hats. Yeah. And the hat they least like to wear is the hat they're least likely going to do, but that could be the most important part of what I'm asking them to do to help me drive my business development ecosystem. Yeah. So if you don't have a detailed person and they're head of your technology and they got to know the back office and you're like, why can't I get dashboards and reports to work for me, or why is the data flawed? Now I'm just causing more stress into my environment. You really need to slow down and really understand what people like to do and what the job or role actually is, and really do your best to mirror that up. And then, obviously foster it with training, education, and development opportunities.
How do you think AI impacts sales?
I think it's wonderful. I really do. I think
so?
I think there's three things that I think when I've looked at the course of my career where there's been advanced technology, I know that there's negativity around it and people are fearful for their jobs. But I've always found technology, when looked at the right light, make humans a lot more efficient, effective, and brighter. It allows.
I think this one, I agree, but I think this one it seems different. It seems like it's going to have a bigger impact than it's like. There definitely will be jobs that will be lost.
I don't know that I think jobs not necessarily will be lost, but I think certain functions of roles will be shifted to technology, which will allow the humans to do what we do best, which is the thinking and the execution and the strategy.
Yes, but if you got a call center or an operation with 150 analysts that are analyzing numbers, spreadsheets, checking stuff, and now an AI software can do that, you've now got 150 people. Maybe you need 5 people or 10 people to manage that system or whatever it is. But you've got 140 people now that I think will have some of that. I do.
So I do believe, but I do think it, and I don't have the stats, but I think if you look at like kind of the roles that people have had and the types of evolution within businesses, I think that yes, there will be displacement, but that displacement is replaced by something else. And I think we might not know what that something else is, but I think it's out there because as like humans, that's how we evolve, and we kind of figure out that kind of next generation of things. I would say that yes, it feels different, but it's also, I would say, it's new. So anything that new is going to feel a little bit different. Yeah. I remember when I was practicing law, and they're like, well, the only way you could serve notice is via fax machine, right? Or you had to mail it. Or you had to do it in person, right? And all of a sudden, this thing called the internet came out. Yeah. And I remember people saying about emails, like, what's going to be so expensive? How much are stamps going to cost? I remember there was conversations about that. And it was like, well, no one's going to ever accept, service by email. Well, how do you think it's done today? Yeah, everything is done email, right? Which means what? Like, are there some roles that maybe in a law firm that were needed because you didn't have the technology that aren't, but yet I think the businesses and the people evolve into that next area that technology can't solve. But getting back to my own sales, so where does it make it more efficient and effective? Well, I think it speeds up your ability to get to your ideal client profiles and your business personas. I think there's technologies that allow you to quickly identify once you know the right people and the right companies. You can get more quickly to email addresses and other types of contact information. I think that those can easily be put into marketing technology, your CRM and otherwise. I think you can make a quick determination based on your research. This person most likely to be kind of in that nurturing phase. I also think that AI can be used in ways to fire start the brain. And what I mean by that is like just the general basic thing that I hear people using is like, I wrote this email and I asked AI to customize it and make it more compelling, right? The wrong way to use AI is to take it and cut and paste it.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? That's the wrong way.
A lot of people are doing that too, unfortunately.
It's unfortunate. It's kind of the unethical way.
Yeah.
I get it. It's easy. It's cheap. Go do it.
Yeah.
But for me, sometimes I'll craft an email, and let's say it's to a prospect, and I'm like, okay, I feel like we might be a little stalled here. Like I have not done enough job on the value proposition.
Mm-hmm.
So if I have a way in which for my own personal and a secure server, kind of like ChatGTP or Perplexity or something along those lines, that I can upload like my sales playbook that has my vision, mission, purpose, my messaging, and can also maybe share a little bit about my products and services. And I can maybe upload a little bit about my prospect. And I can take this email and I say, based upon that information and general review of the World Wide Web for your industry, what are some thoughts to change this email to make it more compelling to have Alex call me back or set up a time for a meeting?
Yep.
I can look at that email and I'll be like, oh, that's a different, oh, I didn't think about rephrasing.
Yeah.
Not cut and paste it.
Yeah.
But then take that idea and say, you know what? My brain will fire in a different way. And I'm not a psychologist. I have no data behind this. This is just my own personal experience.
I agree. I see the same thing.
I think as we get older, our brains go to what is things we've done most often and is most convenient in our brain and the easiest way for us to complete a task, which is for me to write that email in the way I've written it 1,000 times. But now I've slowed down using technology to give me ideas for my brain to say, oh, that's a different avenue. That excites me. Maybe I should try it. I try it once or twice or 10 times. And all of a sudden my response rate back on getting meetings booked goes up by 25, 30%. Now my brain is what? Now I'm going this other way because it's more successful.
Yeah.
So I think the technology can help retrain our brains. And not that we're lazy, but I think at the end of the day, going back to our initial about survival mode, like our bodies are conditioned to do one thing. It's for us to survive, to live another minute, to breathe another minute. And that's the same thing in the tasks we have for work.
I agree. I think AI is an amplifier in most cases. I think if you're doing a job that requires critical thinking, relationship building, human connection, solving problems, being creative, I think you're probably going to use the software like we're doing now, embed it into your regular day-to-day, and you're going to evolve with the times.
Yes.
I think if you're doing a job right now that's very surface level or kind of there's one layer to it and it's a repeatable task that can be done over and over and it doesn't really require a lot of thinking or human connection or relationship building or creativity, those are the jobs I think are going to be gone, not overnight, but I think faster than what we saw probably from the internet ages.
I agree.
think I think it's just the pace of play with this is faster. It looks like that way.
I feel that as well.
Yeah.
I can agree with that. I've always looked at technology being an accelerator.
For sure.
Right? It's not something that is going to be the magic wand that's going to solve all your problems.
No.
But technology, if used in the right way and if you understand it, and this is
It's
where
an
most
amplifier.
business owners don't. They don't step back to understand all these different technologies, right?
Because you got to play with them. You got to try. You got to get in the sandbox and test it out and see what works and what doesn't.
Crawl, walk, run.
So for the podcast, a cool thing that we do, we use AI all the time. And some of it's what you just talked about. Rewrite this email a little more compelling way based on this, and this, right? Or, man, I need to say this first line from this post a little bit shorter and punchier. Give me an idea for this, right? we use it for the podcast too, behind the scenes, where we got 3 cameras in here, right? So one's for both of us, one's on me, one's on you, the guest. It'll, in less than a minute, it'll take all the camera angles. We line up the audio and the video, and AI just goes through and edits the entire thing. Mm-hmm. So if you're watching this now, you're seeing it go from different camera angles. Mm-hmm. But what you don't probably know is that no one did that. That was AI. There's just it's called Autopod if you're interested, and you have multiple different camera angles. But that would have taken, I think that took us maybe an hour and a half, 2 hours to go through. And now it's just a software, and it's 52 seconds. Mm-hmm. And it's great.
Or you had to outsource that role or hire internally, right? So
yeah,
we're
exactly.
talking about what are the roles? So where technology can do something like that, that makes a lot of sense, right? But you are 100% correct. The critical thinking, the bigger strategy, the interpersonal relationships, right? At the end of the day, AI can't sell anything to a computer. It got to sell it to a human being, and most human beings, they want to get to know who they're buying from.
Right.
And, there's all the studies out there that people buy from people they like.
Mm-hmm.
And the more they like you, the more that they are open to glitches in the service or whatever you sold them.
Yep.
They don't, people will say, why'd that big company leave you? Oh, it was price. This other company didn't price. Price was maybe the ultimate factor. But I would submit that if you look back during the course of time, you didn't have the right relationship with the right people.
Speaking of price, some common objections that we've all gotten and sometimes get hung up on, and I know definitely people listening right now are going to interact with, or their teams are going to have. I want to walk and get your thoughts on these. First one is, I need to talk to my team and I'll get back to you. How do you handle that if you're on a sales call?
That's a great question. So the first thing I would ask is I think that's great that you're collaborating with your team. Can you share with me who's part of that team and what their roles are?
And they say Bob, Susie, Janet.
What their roles are. Okay.
Yeah, and their CRO.
Right.
Yeah.
Share with me, in a similar buying situation, what information did you need to bring to that meeting, or what feedback were you looking for? They're going to say X, Y, and Z. What information can I help you either gather or put together to make that meeting more effective and efficient? When's that meeting going to take place? How long does it usually last? What's usually the outcome of that meeting?
Now we're getting in uncomfortable land.
Right. People don't like to ask open-ended questions. Yes. And I always say, what's the worst thing that they say? I don't want to share that with you.
Yeah.
No, I'm not telling you. I would say that if they get really defensive about that and they're kind of price shopping, then I, as a salesperson, because I am a human and not artificial intelligence, I get the opportunity to decide, do I want to play? Is this the right type of partner for me?
It's kind of like dating. If they're not giving you signals back, it's okay, maybe there's not, I move on.
There's not that connection, right? Most salespeople will be like, well, Alex and I might not do business, but I've got a monthly proposal writing requirement that I got to fill, and I need 5, and I only got 4, and it's the end of the month. Mm-hmm. And if I was that salesperson, I would be reluctant to do what? I'm going to have to go back and either spend my own time or go with operations and pricing, spend a lot of wheels where I know it's got just to click a button.
Right.
I'd rather go into that one-on-one with my boss that, you know what, I did miss my proposal requirement by 1 this month, but let me share with you the interaction and Alex and the choice I made. Share with me if you would wanted me to make a different decision.
Yeah.
And if so, I will the next time. Mm-hmm. Right? It's where I think businesses get too hung up on the metric and figuring that checking of the box is success. No. I would say if that salesperson, I'm like, yeah, I want you here long term. Because you're thinking about other people, you're thinking about the resources, you're slowing down to speed up. Because now you might say, well, yeah, I could have spent 3 days on Alex's proposal, but instead I went to 2 business networkings.
There you go.
And by the way, I was able to build my pipeline with what I think is more confident to drive proposals next month. So I'm thinking next month I'll have 7, not 5.
I'd be impressed if someone brought that. Yeah.
Right. And that gets back to your point.
You need thinkers. You need people that think.
And
not
willing
just
to
do.
And willing to ask questions.
Yes.
What's the worst part of
and be vulnerable that they missed it and
Right. If you're not asking open-ended questions, you're making assumptions. You're making assumptions. It's going to lead to something you're going to miss, which means that maybe you left money on the table. Maybe it's a wrong fit. Maybe you didn't have opportunity to go deeper and wider than you thought. I mean, there's so much opportunity out there with open-ended questions. Trust me, the buyer will point you in the right direction if they're really interested in learning more about your product and potentially bringing it on board or service.
Yeah, you find out if they're a true champion or not.
Right.
If they're willing to take the next steps, get you introduced to other people, it means they want to solve that problem and they think you're the right fit. If they're holding back, there's a disconnect, or they're not really interested in solving that problem, or maybe it's not critical, or maybe they don't think your solution is the right fit. Yeah. What do you say to a prospect that says, I need to think about it?
Once again, I think you always acknowledge the objection. I think that, this is a big decision.
Of course you should think about it.
Of course. Obviously, this is a strategic problem. We've already identified through that. You need to solve it. So you want to make sure that you have the right partner. Can you share with me what are the top things that are important to you when you say you need to think about it? And what does that actually mean? Like, do you need more information? What is your deliberation process? Will you be consulting with a team, right? So now that first objection, I'm bringing in my team to slow down the process, potentially, whatever that might be. Now I'm trying to figure out what that is, and really trying to figure out what I might be able to do in order to move this along. Now, you might be someone who's a very deliberate decision maker.
Yeah.
And I'll ask all those questions and I'll get the right answers, and I'll be like, what I'm sensing is you just need a little bit of time to digest that we're the right partner. I'm thinking about a week. What do you think about it, Alex? I think that's about the right time period. So why don't we do this? What if we stop talking today? You go back and deliberate. If you have questions, I'm available. Here's my cell number. But let's just agree that next Friday at 3:00, I'm going to come back and then we'll answer all your questions, and or get a sense of where that deliberation is leading us.
What about that approach works so well? Why does it work?
One, I think it's compassionate.
Yeah.
One, I think it recognizes that you understand the decision maker.
Yes.
So a lot of sales is psychology. Do you know who you're actually working with? I think it also shows a sense of maturity. I'm not here just for the close.
Yeah.
I'm here to make sure it's the right fit.
And a little bit of like, I don't need your business today, right? I'd love to work with you, but I don't need you. Right. I'm not desperate.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely like that. And I think that also goes back to the salesperson controlling the sales cycle, but allowing the buyer to think that they're in control.
Totally. Because what you said is key. You seem like the person that really wants to think things over like this, and I think that's amazing. How does a week sound, Yeah. And they're like, wow, okay, yeah, they understand me, they get it, and a week does sound good. I feel good about this, and they're in control, but really you've dictated the pace and the next steps.
Yeah. Here's another example that may come up in the questions, or something that I confront with the sales team ever. Alex called me and says he needs a proposal by Friday. Right? Always, whatever that might be, you need a proposal Friday. It's Tuesday. So I got 3 days. So in that scenario, you go through the same opening. What happened that caused the sense of urgency?
Yeah.
What will happen once I get you the proposal? I'm also, as a salesperson, going to say, hey, Alex, I would love to get you a proposal, or I really would like to get you a proposal. And I can do that. But know that it's at such short notice, I'm going to actually have to move a couple other things that I had priorities this week, and I'm happy to do that. But if I do that, it's called the if-then statement. If I do that, then will you agree to meet with me in person on Tuesday next week to review the proposal, answer questions, and talk about definitive next steps?
Love it.
If you're not going to commit to the proposal review, I'm not going to commit to move my other priorities to get something on paper so you can just shop me against someone else. So I also tell when I coach the salespeople in negotiations, how many times have you heard of this scenario? Alex, you're the sales manager. I'm the sales person. Hey, Alex, I just had this great call with Howard, and he said that our price was too high. What do you want to do? Now, if I'm a sales manager, there's only one answer I have, which is a question. Well, what do we need to do in order to win the business? I don't know. He just said our price is too high. If I'm a salesperson in that situation, here's what I'm going to say, or I'm going to share, is I'm going to say, well, I'm sorry that, thank you for the feedback on the price. Can you share with me what about the price feels a little higher than maybe what you were expecting to pay? I looked at other competitors. It's not within my budget, stuff like that. I would ask a question about I would first ask a question. I try and put pricing in the parking lot. I said, assume pricing was not a factor and it met your budget. Isolate out. Is there anything else that would keep you from doing business with us? No, there's not. It's simply about price. Okay. What is it about that price and where we would need to be? Okay. And let's just say I need a 10% reduction, whatever it might be. In that situation, once again, I'm going to if then as the salesperson. I'm saying, okay, if I'm able to reduce the price by 10%, would you then be in a position to sign the statement of work and contract by Friday, whatever, pick a day? Yeah, I would be. Great. I'll be back in touch with you by the end of the day or a few minutes. Then I go back to, hey, Alex, I had a great call with Howard. He goes, there is nothing standing in the way of us getting this deal other than price. He feels we're about 10% too high. I shared with him that if we were able to reduce it by 10%, he would sign on Friday. It's within our authority, but I just want to run it by you. Mm-hmm. Is that something you'd like to do? Mm-hmm. Yes. So now the manager's like, great. I'm already in checking this off as a win. Yes, you're authorized to go through. I then go back and call Howard and like, hey, we're absolutely able to meet that pricing. No, we're really looking for business. I've got the contract all ready for you to sign and review, and then you move on.
Now, what do you say to the sales coach that says never lower your pricing?
Well, first of all, I believe that sales people should always have some sort of authority. So when you're creating kind of those rules for engagement and negotiation, it's always about profit margin. And I think as a salesperson, I probably should have the ability to negotiate to a certain extent without having the conversation with my boss.
Right.
So so if you want me to have a 20% profit margin, well, I'm going to go in it and knowing that I can't go below 20 without approval, I'm going to go in at 25, 26. And if I negotiate at 23, everyone should be happy for the most part.
Right.
I don't believe the question, you should never lower your price. I mean, yes, if you lower your price and you're at the Mendoza line for profit margin
right.
and you're going to lose money, then you have to politely, in a way, to convey and say like, Alex, thank you so much for the opportunity. We're really looking forward. We thought you'd be a great business partner. We definitely know we have the right solution. By the way, here are the things we talked about, your problems and how we could meet them. Unfortunately, this is the lowest price that we can go. And it's really a shame that is the sole reason why. Because what you'll probably find if you go elsewhere is you might have problems in these things that we do well.
Mm-hmm.
But we understand sometimes our pricing decision. We wish you well. I'm here for when and if it doesn't work out. Right? So now you've kind of like ethically and like pretty much once again what you shared earlier. I don't need you.
Yeah.
I want you. I don't need you. I want you at a certain level, and that's how I would do it. I think when a business manager says you never lower your price, I will say that to me that goes back to culture and like what are we really trying to do here?
Yeah.
And what type of relationship are you trying, and how are you trying to empower your salesperson? If you have strict rules like that, they're always going to burden the sales manager or leader with everything that doesn't fall within the line. I want to give my salespeople a little bit of room to be creative and negotiate while still hitting their profit margins that they need to in order for the business to be successful.
Yeah. I think you got to be flexible in business. You have to be a little bit flexible. I think what you don't want to do is obviously, and I'm sure you would agree, is use price as the crutch every time to close a deal. It's like, what if I give you 20%? It's like, okay, we didn't need to go that route, but as a last resort, if that's the one sticking point and it's 5%, 10%, and you have the margins to do it, why not make the damn deal?
Right. I agree with that. That's why we talk about isolate. I'm a big fan of putting pricing in the parking lot.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times people will use pricing, but that's not the reason why.
Right.
So then I try and say, okay, pricing's aside, does everything else line up? If pricing were right, would we be your partner of choice?
Yeah.
Yes, you would.
Right.
Okay. So now I know pricing is the one thing we have to address.
Yeah.
You can maybe think about ways in which to ask open-ended questions to really determine on where you truly need that price, not so much percentage. Like, well, what if you don't go with us and you go with a lower price provider, but they don't have these features and benefits? What would that cost to the company be? To see if you can eat into whatever cost savings they would have on the buy.
Right.
That is going to end up eating expenses on the use.
Yeah.
Right. But once again, goes back to your points. It takes patience and diligence, and salespeople really need to have that mindset and say, it's not it's not a sprint, it's a marathon.
Yeah.
It's a journey. Every sales interaction is a journey. And that whether your sales cycle is a week, a month, a quarter, a year, 18, 24 months, whatever it is, try not and rush it and solely go to price.
Yeah.
Because if you solely go to price, you're going to get in those situations all the time. And no one wants to be the commodity. You don't want to be buying business. You want to be, value,
right.
Positioning your company and your services.
What made you want to start your own business, and how is it going? Was it what you expected? Is it different? Was it harder? Was it easier? It's been your journey so far.
Yeah, so that's another great question, Alex. So as I mentioned earlier, I started my career as an attorney, 30 in board, and I decided that I wanted to leverage my law career, but I didn't want to be in court every day.
Yeah.
So I stumbled upon a large enterprise company that was selling front office and back office solutions to law firms. So it was really my first sales experience, though I worked in a restaurant as a lawyer. I think there's a lot of things that we're doing with selling, right?
Yeah.
But I guess formal kind of sales role,
right.
where it's kind of like your title.
Was that hard for you to make that change? Because I feel like, you went to law school, you did the bar, you're a lawyer, there's a certain status with that, and then you're like, all right, I'm going to go be a salesperson.
It was not a tough decision for me. I think there were probably certain family members who had a tougher time with it than I did, given the fact there were student loans and the stature
right.
of being a lawyer,
Why was it not tough for you?
I was 30 and bored, and I was miserable.
There you go. And
to the best of my knowledge, I'm only going to do this once. And I wanted to do something that was meaningful. I wanted to do something that would fulfill my days. And it just didn't feel like what I was doing was making a difference. And I was like, well, what else would make a difference? And when I got into that role, I was working with small, mid-sized, and large law firms in the city of Chicago. And I got to learn a lot of things really quickly. One was which most professional service organizations like lawyers or accountants, like they really have a passion for what they do. They might not be the most brilliant kind of business people, right? And so they were looking for counsel, which I leveraged and was part of my role as an attorney, into better ways. And I happened to work for a technology company to use it. And it was back in the day when we were migrating from the dial-up to the internet. That's how old I am. So, remember those days. So I got to talk to a lot of business owners or people in business owners' roles while they were practicing law. And I really kind of figured out, like, God, I really had a capability for understanding what the problem was or asking the right questions. Once again, being a litigator, you ask questions. But then also being able to see the value that I was driving to them with the right solution. And we had a litany of solutions. And I was fortunate, during a 25, 30-year career to kind of work in 4 or 5 different companies in different industries. And my journey to kind of owning my business really started in 2014. So I was exiting one business. I had about 90 days to kind of figure out what I wanted to do next. And at the time, I wrote down a business plan, and I just wrote down all these different games that I could play and assessments. I was calling it like outsourced vice president of sales, because back then there was no word fractional. Mm-hmm. And then I decided, well, I couldn't be the smartest guy in the world, so Google was around, and I sort of Googled it, and I found this, group that I'm affiliated with right now called Sales Acceleration down in Indianapolis, and they were founder-led, and they were senior VPs of sales coming to start to consult with small and mid-sized business owners. But I was young dad. My daughter was 2 or 3.
Yeah.
Got an opportunity to work at a company called Hillard Heinz, which was professional services, security risk consulting. And they needed someone to come in and kind of help them with this business development ecosystem. So I was fortunate to work with a lot of passionate, not just founders, but like subject matter experts. Going back to a point I made earlier, really one of the first organizations, I wouldn't say the first, but a consistent theme throughout was working with organizations that really had a vision, mission, purpose, and chosen values. And that was really the point of entry to the company. It wasn't simply just words on paper. And we grew relatively quickly, was part of the leadership team that helped us figure out the right partner for a strategic sell. We sold to a very large strategic buyer. And then I stayed with that buyer for about another 3 years in different roles, senior roles. And then I always say that being the acquired, at a certain point, people started to leave.
Yeah.
The systems we used were deemed redundant.
Yeah.
The way we went to market was watered down for what we did because we're part of a large organization, rightfully or wrongfully. And my voice became a little bit like Charlie Brown's teacher. And I just decided at that moment, and for other reasons, that it was just time to kind of launch my practice. So for me, what was the most surprising really was that my professional network I was able to leverage relatively quickly.
Yeah.
And so I was able to kind of find my first kind of full-time manufacturing client within the first 90 days of kind of putting my shingle out.
Nice.
The second thing I learned really quickly was there were nuances to what people were telling me about how to build the business that I think I quickly latched onto and was able to make a pivot. So the first one was, well, you should and join all these networking groups.
Yeah.
You should do all these one-on-ones and a lot of activity. And I did that, Alex, for about 30 days. And I had to have 100 one-on-ones, right? And maybe part of that process for me was to really then take a step back. I decided what I share with my clients, I did on my own, slow down. I said, well, wait a minute. If I'm trying to work with founder-led or family-run businesses that are discouraged, exhausted, or disappointed around the growth of the organization, who are those business or family members complaining to about sales? And then I really, in the business networking world, I really said, well, there's probably two people. They probably have a business coach who they're bitching and moaning to about sales, or someone who wears the financial hat they're talking to and saying, this is not an expense problem. It's not about cutting heads. It's about we have to grow top line.
Yeah.
And then I laser focused on really trying to network with those folks and trying to understand what the needs of their clients were and really get to work with those trusted partners and have them be my centers of influence. And once I started to do that, then things gave me opportunities doing lunch and learns in front of 15, 25 business owners. Allowed me to do podcasts where I was sharing the value of what I did, but made it meaningful to a business coach and being like, hey, this is why you want to work in my network.
Right.
The third part of it is
Power partners.
Power partners, right. The third part was no matter whether it's your first client or you're fortunate enough to get a lot of clients early on, do good work for those clients.
Yeah.
They will refer you business. And
That's
really where my business has really taken off. So those two focuses, knowing who your centers of influence are and making sure that you're building abundant mindsets. And the most important thing in all those networks is give first. And I was fortunate through my legal career in 25, 30 years. I don't know what it was, but I bought into LinkedIn very, very early. And I created my own way in which kind of building my network. And I have a very expansive and meaningful network, and I'm able to provide introductions. I'll give you one quick example. I was working with a client, and they were growing very quickly, and they kind of outgrew their commercial banking relationship. Just not the right fit anymore. They were doing more complex things. And so just by listening and being involved in conversations, within probably 20 minutes, I was able to make 3 strategic introductions to 3 different commercial bankers to allow this business owner to start evaluating their relationships and figure out what they need to do in 4 to 6 weeks because, there were other things that were going on that they needed to solve. And for me, having a network I can really reach into goes to a point you were making earlier, is like, how do you always increase your value to your clients?
Yeah.
Well, that's how I increase my value, is that I make it a requirement for all the clients I work with. I have to be in your leadership meetings. Now, do I have to be in the leaderships to help and grow sales? No, but it's really helpful. It also allows me to really understand what is really impactful in that business.
Right.
And that if there's another problem, HR, hiring, something along the lines of financial, that I can say, hey, would you like to talk to? I had one client that they were a remote environment, and they're like, I'm not so sure we have the right tax guidance for people working in a state, and what does that really mean? I'm like, well, I know a CPA. I know 2 or 3 who actually work with businesses all across the country that have remote workers. Do you just want to have a conversation? What I don't do is say, this is the one partner. I like to say, hey, here's 3 people. And the next step that I always do, Alex, I'm like, if you want, I'll facilitate those conversations. I'll set up the calls for you.
Mm-hmm.
I will make sure I sit in for the first 5 minutes and make sure. And if they want to do that, have me do that, great. If not, sometimes they just run out on their own. But I think those are I think, the biggest learnings for me. And I think the last thing I'll leave you with, Alex, is that I think that you have to have confidence in what you do. And you have to be able to know that it's a big world out there, and every person you talk to, they might have a problem you can solve, but you have to be mature enough to know they might not be the right fit. Mm-hmm. And you might have to be like, this is not the right fit for me. Because if you are in kind of the consulting lane or this fractional lane, a lot of why we chose to do it was like, we get to choose who we get to work with. Mm-hmm. And the other part about that confidence is that there's a little bit of unpredictability. Some clients are project-based, and you're going to finish your project successfully, but they're going to exit.
Yep.
Some others, we do what we're supposed to do. We help them grow. At some point, they're like, we'd like to have a full-time Howard here. Can you help me find that person? So where I'm kind of working to replace myself. Yeah. So there might be ebbs and flows in your business. It might not be a linear up or a flat line across, but you have to have confidence in yourself and the networks and the relationships you're building that the next opportunity will happen. And an example of that is recently for a trade association, the Valley Industrial Association out here in Batavia, was putting together for some of their members this whole concept of what is the business development ecosystem and what are some DIYs, things I can do myself to help implement it. And so I was, invited and honored to be part of a group that kind of put on panel discussion and things along those lines. And obviously, like you and all good content managers, I'm putting it on LinkedIn, I'm sharing it with my network, and I'm saying, hey, you know any business owners or what? And it just so happened that one of my network partners went to there, and I'd known him, but we had coffee and stuff. He's part of a group, but we never really engaged more in that. He sat through the presentation, and immediately afterwards, I was like, I think I have 4 or 5 clients that you should now talk to because I now better understand your process and how you think. Right? So now they have the confidence to introduce you.
Right.
Right? And it comes at a really good time. And I'm like, hey, and he's like, so what do you think about working with this client? I'm like, it depends. I'm like, let's just set up get to know you calls. Let's make sure there's a fit. Let's make sure that it really makes sense for ways in which I can help them. And I will guarantee you this, out of that conversation, if it's not me, I know someone who may be able to help. And so they're going to get that problem solved. It's just a question of by who and then what timing.
I think that's a good perspective to have, is not just, hey, I do this one solution or product. That's the only way I can serve or provide value to my customer. No, I've got these other opportunities and connections and ways to bring people in. I think that just makes you stickier to a company, add more value, more long-lasting relationships, and you get to help bring other people in, which helps their business grow too. Yeah. You mentioned give first. I saw that when I was on the call with you. You don't know this, but if you remember on the call we had before this, just to get to know each other, see if you'd be a good fit for the podcast, one of the things you mentioned is you go, do you have an assessment that you do? It's kind of an entryway into your services, because we do monthly retainers and typically longer term engagements. And I said, no, I don't, but that's a good idea, Howard. And I got to thinking, and I put some thought into it and some action behind it. And probably 2 days later, I had an assessment. And we've already sold a few of them. Yeah, so I want to thank you for that.
No, it's my pleasure. And I think the best part about something along those lines is, on the assessment front, is that you have the power, depending on the client. Once the assessment, probably the power in the assessment for you is the information you're getting back from it.
Totally.
Right. So sure, you want to know if they have skin in the game and want to pay it, but you also now have the power to be like, hey, this client's big enough that, I'm going to give the assessment for free. Yeah. And then I'm going to come back with a tailored plan, because I know that's what they appreciate, as opposed to maybe another client like, I got to really see if you really want to play with me. So it's going to be a nominal amount, 500,000, whatever you might charge. But at the end of the day, here's the other thing about assessments at times, depending on your business, it also can buy you time. So if you know the clients in front of you and the workload, and you're a solo entrepreneur, or you're working with yourself in 1099s, sometimes if an assessment's appropriate, it's like, okay, we're going to take next 30 or 45 days. So a lot of times you're evaluating that assessment and you kind of have understanding of where that's going to go, but you can respectfully delay the moment of full engagement while you're working through some other deliverables. It's like you have to really understand your own balance. Otherwise, a mistake I made was like, well, I'm just going to elongate my day. Sure, I'll take that 7:30 call.
Yeah.
Sure, I'll take the 5:30 call. Well, now it's like, wait a minute. Now those are recurring calls. Like the day has got it, so it builds up. So there are techniques and ways in which you can, help yourself in a solo entrepreneur way with you're not feeling like you've got the draconian corporate world or life that you had, which is one of the reasons why a lot of us have not gone back, right?
Right, exactly.
We're like, we just don't want that.
Yes.
And so...
Well, and one of the things it did on the back end too, so it's good for the front end to get people in, assess them, turn into other paid programs. But even on the back end now, we've got a similar system where, let's say you do a 6-month or 12-month engagement with us. At the end of that, you may want to do a quarterly touch point with us. So become in every quarter or twice a year. And that's opportunity to add more value to a customer, increase revenue, be a little bit stickier because things change so fast. Like if you looked at 6 months ago, LinkedIn, it's different than today.
Right.
Podcasting's in a different place now. Video change, a lot of the things change. And so it's an opportunity to say, hey, we're done with the initial engagement. We did a great job. We created the wins and success we wanted. But what does the next year look like with us? And here are some options to continue working with us. So thanks again for that. I appreciate that.
The other thing you could think about, assessment is foundational. When you do your checkpoint, now you can show the value you brought. We've moved from that point to now this point.
Yeah.
Right. So now you're subtly giving the value back and saying, remember we started here?
Yeah.
And now we're here. And by the way, we got that in 6 months. And by the way, let's have a conversation of what that's meant to the business. Save time, energy, resources, increase revenue, whatever it might be. Now you're monetizing it, right? And now they're like, oh, great. Well, Alex and his team, we want to now see what the next iteration is because we can't believe we came this far in 6 months. Imagine what we do in the next 12 months.
That's right.
Right. So it basically drives value for you.
Howard, I appreciate you coming on the show, man. This has been a great conversation.
It's been fun. So I really appreciate you and your time. And please stay in touch, and anything that I can do to help you or anyone, if they just have questions, they know where to find me.
Where can they find you, connect with you, learn more about what you do?
Yeah, so great question. So Howard Fisher's the name. I'm on LinkedIn, so you can find me on LinkedIn. You can also find me through Sales Acceleration, which is a group I belong with. I got a website. My company name is Hantarra, so you can find it that way. And I'm not shy about letting people reach me. Everyone has it anyway, so you can just contact me on my cell number, 312-560-0336. That's how you get in touch with me. So it's out there. If you looked at my website, it's out there. If you looked on LinkedIn, so anyone who can get me can just get me that way.